Now that you know how to move the sprite around the screen, we're going to focus on the pen command. The pen command lets us draw things on the screen and create different pictures using color. Let's get started. Here I've got a very simple program. You'll notice instead of the usual sprite, I just have a little gray box in the middle of the screen. We don't want the cat getting in the way of what we're coding. Now, right here, we're using a couple of the pen commands. I've got a forever loop that's basically just going to make my pen go in circles, and really not a whole lot going on. We'll go through all the different pen options. So if I click, you'll see we're just getting a nice blue donut shape. Now, a couple things. When I restart the program, you'll notice that every time my screen starts off completely clear. That's because I've actually used a clear command to sort of wipe everything down. So down here, you'll notice we've got the stage, which is the background where everything's happening, and then we have our collection of sprites. And again, for this program, I just have the one little sprite. Now, if we click over here on the stage, that's basically what they call the background in Scratch. And here I've got it attached to an event. When the flag is clicked, the background screen will be cleared. So if I click right here, you'll notice it actually clears the screen. If I'm clicking over here where the commands are, that's basically just activating the one that's attached to the screen. To activate both, I go back up here to the global flag, and you get both happening. Now, something that's important to remember is sometimes when students are working with this, you'll have them accidentally be working on the scripts on the background and not on the sprites. And you'll see here the difference. Here I've selected the pen area, and again, just scrolling down, I'm on the stage, which is the background. If I click over here on sprite, all of a sudden I get all of these commands. So it's kind of a little bit of gotcha when you're working with students. If you have a point where all of a sudden they're complaining the commands they thought should be there go away, a lot of times it's because they're accidentally on the stage and not on the sprite. Now you'll notice here we've got a bunch of different options under pen. We've got clear, we'll look at what stamp does in just a minute. You have pin up and pin down. So pin up and pin down, if you picture drawing on a dry erase board with a dry erase marker, pin down means you're drawing, and pin up means exactly what it sounds like. You've picked the pin up. We also have 3 different options for how to make changes to the color. We can change the shade, which is how light or dark a color is, and then you can also change the size. We're going to go through real quick and see how each of these work. So again, our basic program here is just making a nice blue donut, nothing too exciting. What we've got right here is I'm using basically the real simple color picker to choose my color. So right here it says set pen color to, and then we have this blue square. Now watch what happens when I click on the blue square. Right now we have an arrow, and you'll see now it's a hand. If I click back and forth, it goes from arrow to hand. The hand is a color selector, and so if you watch the square as I move around the screen, basically whatever color that finger is currently touching is the color that's available. And so let's say I want to make a purple donut instead. If I click here on the purple under looks, you'll see my square is now purple. And when I click and it goes around, we get a beautiful purple donut instead. We have some other options here. We can change the pen color. So I'm going to put that inside my loop. I'm going to start by changing by 5 just so you can see. Now the color ranges from 0 up to 200. So let's see how that changes. Okay. You can see here we're now getting a rainbow effect. So it starts with the purple color because that's what I set it to. And then it's basically just cycling in order through all of the possible colors. Now, one of the limitations of this little color picker is you're limited to whatever colors are on the screen. And a lot of times students want to get more options than that. So here we've got set pen color 2. I'm just going to plop that in right here. And, oops. I'm going to get rid of the picker. This one lets us start with a number instead. So I'm going to actually change pen color by 0 just to turn that command off for a second. You'll notice here when I start, basically the color 0 is red. If I change this, let's change to 50. You'll see that changes it to a green. Let's go back down to 25. Okay, we get kind of a ugly orange color there. Maybe I shouldn't say ugly. I don't know. Maybe that's your favorite color, but kind of a dusty orange color. All the way up to 124, and you'll notice we get blue. So basically you've got all the different colors of the rainbow available. They start at red, and then it goes sort of in color order through orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and then back to red all the way at the end. And so let's go ahead and change this back. We're going to change it so it's changing the color by 5. And again, you can kind of see that cycle happening. It goes through red, oranges, yellows, all the way through and back around. This is actually good exercise to let students experiment. Rather than telling them what the color is, let them experiment and see if they can figure out about what range orange is and what range purple is, those types of things. Now, one of the other options we have here is the shade. So the shade is how light or dark the color is. Let's go ahead and start the shade off at 50. And you'll notice we don't really get any change. Those are the colors we were seeing before. But if I change shade down to 0 and restart this, you'll see we're not seeing any color variations there. 0 pretty much is all the way down to black. It's like you take black paint and just mix it in at full amount. But if I start upping the shade, let's change it to 20. Okay, you'll see we're getting that rainbow order again, but much darker colors. Now shade goes all the way up to, let's see, oops, I typed in the wrong thing here. And let's try it. All right, there we go. Shade goes all the way up to 100. So you get very light pastel colors. So between 0 and 100, you're basically dialing in how light or dark that particular color is going to be. You can also use this change pen shade. I'm going to change this by 7. And so you can see here the color and the shade are changing. It's sort of a different cycle as we go through, so you get different effects there. The last option we have is this idea of pen size. You'll notice here I set the pen size to 30 to make it nice and easy to see. If I change this back down to 1, it's basically a very thin line that we'll get. So it makes it, you can see there, it's harder to see the effects that we're getting. Pen size goes basically from 0, which means we don't get anything, all the way up to 255. Now pay special attention to that 255. There it is, the nice fat pen color. That number 255 comes up a lot in programming, and in one of the later lessons we'll talk about why that's a pattern we see a lot. All right, and the last thing we're going to do here is we're going to change the pen size by 1. I'm going to start the pen size back down here at 1, and let's restart because the circle's a little too big. So there we go. We started with a very small pen size, and as we go it gets larger and larger. And you could also go the opposite direction. So I'm going to set my pen size to 255, and now I'm going to change the pen size by -1. And with this we'll actually get kind of a nice layering. So we have a nice big circle, and then as the colors layer through, it's getting smaller and smaller. So as you can see, there are a lot of different options you can play with here. Students have a lot of fun really experimenting with the pen and the colors. Beyond this too, it's fun to really be creative with this. There are also a lot of applications we can do with math and science here. If you picture using data and creating a graph, these different commands are how you might create those graphs on the screen. So this is a technique that we'll use in almost every program we'll do.